Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to IMU Healthcare Facebook Live. I'm Jeff, and today we will chatting about with our clinical psychologist, Miss Evelyn Soong, on the topic of supporting employees' mental health for better work from home outcome. The topic becomes crucial as companies around the globe start rolling out mandatory work from home due to COVID-19. Whether you are a newbie or a work from home veteran, we are here to share some tips on what you could do to ensure your employees as well as yourself to stay positive, productive, and effective. As we move along with our discussion today, feel free to type in your questions or even share experience on what worked or didn't work for you, so all of us could learn together. For questions, we will answer them at the end of the session. Okay, Miss Evelyn,
Hi.
let's get down to do and start first with the simple questions.
Yes.
What exactly is mental health?
Right. So, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Evelyn, clinical psychologist from IMU Healthcare. So, yes, Jeff, that's a very good question. A lot of people, when we talk about mental health, right, the first thing that will come to mind is that, people will say things like people with depression, people with anxiety. So there's a lot of negative connotation that is associated with mental health. But actually, according to WHO's definition, mental health is actually beyond just the absence of mental disorders. So simply said is that mental health consists of a person's overall well-being and how that person is able to manage their stress, to bounce back, to cope at times of distress. So yes, during times like this, especially right now, even the extension of the MCO, right? A lot of people, they are actually feeling very fearful, very anxious because things seems to be, out of control. And a lot of employers and employees that I know of is also pretty much stressed out with work. So today we'll be really discussing and diving into what are the techniques and skills that we can learn to to apply when it comes to your employees or among coworkers.
Okay. When we are at home, we are supposed to be in a relaxing environment. So,
Yes.
if employees are already working out of their castle, why is it still important to look into the well-being of employees' mental health?
Right. So a lot of people, they have the impression that working from home, right? Initially, the special arrangements between the employers and the employees. So for instance, for people who needs to juggle between work and non-work matters, like new moms taking care of their newborn babies, or people who needs to, for example, rush off certain reports. So the concept of work from home applies because it is short term, it is predictable, right? But right now with MCO and the extension of MCO, a lot of things maintain or remain unpredictable. A lot of things can't be controlled. So there is a lot of built up stress from there, from different areas. For instance, there is a lot of work responsibilities, deadline, KPI. On top of that, you now maybe for some married with kids, with elderly, you need to take care of them. You can no longer send them to, childcare centers and things like that. Thirdly, also because of social distancing, now there's a lot of us, perhaps we can't see our colleague physically and we can't communicate with them. So that slows down a lot when it comes to productivity and communication. With all of these things added up, right? These can actually take a toll on a person's mental health. Research actually do show that, when we don't have a physical separation between home and a workplace, that can actually induce stress and also burnout. And this burnout is also closely related to a person's emotional, physical well-being and mental well-being. So yes, to respond to your question, Jeff, because of all this, that's why it is very important to look into employees or co-workers' well-being.
Okay. Since employers and co-workers are not physically interacting with their employees and colleagues, how can one tell if an employee or a co-worker working from home is stressed out?
Right. So I always say this to the people around me, my clients as well. There's nothing beats checking in with them, right? And you can never know how is a person doing or whether they are stressed out if we don't check in with them. Especially right now, we can't see them physically there with us as well. So there are actually 3 areas that we can actually look into. So I'll split this and make it easier for the audiences here. I'll split it to A, B, and C. All right. So A basically means affect, B means behavior, C means cognitive. So what does all this A, B, C means? A basically means affect how a person feels. So if you want to check in with a person to see how is that person doing, whether this person is stressed out, instead of asking, are you stressed? A close-ended question is a yes or a no question. Maybe we can ask by saying, how are you feeling today? Make it an open-ended question than a close-ended question, right? So that's tip number 1. Behaviorally, now it's easy to actually observe how is that person doing physically, right? In the office, if let's say a person is more withdrawn. But right now, if most of us are working from home, how can we observe the person? We can observe by engaging, when you guys have teleconferencing, video conferencing, we can perhaps see this person, hey, last time this person used to be very enthusiastic, right, when it comes to work. But right now, how come when it comes to video call, con call, this person seems a bit withdrawn or disconnected? Try to pick up these signs, or even, if let's say this person is married, you can see kids running at the background and it's very disruptive when it comes to work, and you see this person in front of you really stressed out. Maybe we can also check in with them and ask them, how are you doing lately, right? So that's the behavioral part. Lastly, the cognitive part would be, well, we can judge that perhaps by seeing the output or the results that, some companies, they have work plans, daily work plans. So if some of our colleagues, peers struggling to complete certain KPI, maybe we can check in with them and see if there's anything that is happening around them with their lives that they find it difficult to manage right now. So this would typically be the ABCs on how we can identify an employee who is possibly stressed out during this time.
Okay. Ms. Evelyn,
Yes.
what can be done to provide better support for employees or co-workers who have working from home?
Right. Now, I know a lot of companies, they are actually using a lot of different techniques and strategies, right? So for the audiences, for you guys who are tuned into our live video today, feel free to leave some comments on what worked for you and what are the challenges that you face working from home as we go through some of the pointers right now, right? Now, what are the things that employers or employees can do to support each other when working from home? Now, when it comes to mental health, it's something that a lot of us feels very abstract, right? So I'll make this analogy to explain this on what we can do. Now, imagine if, say, a person today in front of you say that I have diabetes, right? This person has diabetes. Now, what will you do as a friend or a coworker, employee, to help support this person who has diabetes? Now, some, they may be concerned of this person's physical health. So maybe giving some suggestion about what to eat, what not to eat during lunchtime. I know some friends, will control and say, hey, don't eat this food. It's not good for you, right? Taking care of this person's physical health. But there are also some who would, seek out support, right? So for instance, perhaps joining a diabetes support group, right? Gaining some support from people who are going through similar condition as yourself. Thirdly, through all this support group, we can also gain emotional strength and also feel comforted during this time. So it's not just about giving opinion and support, things like that, but also something physical, emotional, and social involved as well. Now, that's the physical part. When it comes to mental health, it's actually the same thing, right? So when it comes to mental health, what can we do to support a person when it comes to physical? So I understand that, some companies, they actually would send out emails to employees saying that what would be the, healthy lifestyle to practice during this period of time. Eat well, sleep well, all those basic sleep hygiene. There may be also being creative during this period of time, finding out resources on some online courses that one can attend for free. I know some universities, they are giving some free online courses as well. And maybe just a gentle reminder through email, informing colleagues, our peers, that there are actually other things that can be done to, do stretches or deep breathing, send out some videos that they think it's helpful. Show them basically that everyone cares during this period of time. For those who are working, I know that there are some that is on rotating shift. So some people, they take turns to go back to the office. So how do we take care of people's mental health physically during this time? So some companies, they would also provide some care packs. For instance, like a pack that has hand sanitizers or mask, right? Some would even write encouraging notes and place it on the board. So the next week, when another team comes, they can see all these notes. And to make sanitizers available in the office, maintaining those social distance as well, right? So those things are something that could possibly be helpful in maintaining or to encourage and support a person's physical well-being. Socially, now, a lot of us right now, we always say social distancing, right? We can't talk, we can only talk via video calls. So even though I've emphasized this to some of my peers before, even though right now we are physically apart, right? But we are not apart by our heart. We are still connected to each other. So to foster that feeling of that sense of belongingness is also very important during this time. So now we have, we see people doing virtual team lunch, drinking coffee time, lunch time together virtually. I think that is very important to build connection and to maintain that kind of routine with your peers. Plus, food binds us together, right, as Malaysians. And I notice also, I'm not sure if you guys, the audience, experience that many of us find that we binge eat or snack a lot during this MCO. Do you guys find that? Yeah. So a lot of us tend to snack a lot during this period of time. Why is that? One of the reasons why is this is what we call as comfort eating, right? When we are stressed, a lot of us tend to eat more food, and biologically that helps to induce or to help release certain stresses as well. So one tip is to be mindful of what you snack as well. So what are the other things that we can do to foster this sense of belongingness? One is very important to also encourage team members that we are in this together and we are here to support one another. If you guys have any problems with work, feel free to text us, inform us, and we'll be supporting each other, right? Next point is setting boundaries. I find that it's also very important during this period of time. A lot of us working from home right now, as I mentioned earlier, because there's no physical separation between work and non-work. So maybe your bedroom, like a place, your table, it also becomes your workspace right now. And we tend to get really stressed out from that, right? So maintaining some boundaries, I think that's very helpful too. So perhaps we can virtually check out from work by informing, our peers that, okay, I'm going off now. See you guys tomorrow. Or even turning off notification, because I noticed there are also people, even if it's non-urgent work matters, they feel like the need to respond to all these emails or text messages. Maintaining the boundary, I think, is also crucial during this period of time. Yes, so I see one of the audience here said that need to lock down the fridge too. Right, so locking down the fridge, well, maybe you could try that, but being mindful of what you eat and what you purchase from the convenience store or the grocery store, I think that's very, very important, right? So next point, now we talked about physical and social. How about emotional and mental support? Now, one of the main things that we really emphasize on is to communicate empathy. And a lot of people ask, what is communicating empathy? How is it like? Try to imagine the last time or think about the time where you feel really understood or comforted when talking to someone. Have you always had that experience before? Now, what about this person that makes you feel comforted or comfortable and makes you feel understood? Some of the things that we would recommend, right, doing is that really listening to this person, not listening just by the ear, right, but listening through what they say, observing, and listening through your heart as well. Try to acknowledge their feelings. If a person is sharing and telling you, right now I'm really stressed out, I don't know what to do, my kids are running around, I can't seem to control them, I don't know what to do. Some of the things, instead of jumping into giving some suggestion, perhaps we can do by saying, I hear that you're really going through a tough time. I'm here with you whenever you want to talk about it. Leave a space, at least this person knows that, he or she can reach out to you. If, let's say, work has become like a major stressor, I know some companies would allow certain levels of flexibility, for instance, shorter work from home hours, right? But if, let's say, you're talking to this person and suddenly it escalated to that person become very panicky and in distress, what can you do? Okay, first thing first, don't be panicked yourself. Okay, there are 5 things that you can do when a person gets panicked and how you could respond to it. All right, 5 things. Step number 1 is gently pause that person. Okay, you can just gently say that, okay, hey, I'd like to pause you here for a while. Okay, I know that you're going through a lot. Just pause for a while and take a deep breath. Okay, I'm here with you. Take a deep breath. We do this together. So step number 1, pause, stop the person, encourage that person to take a deep breath. Step number 2 is to reassure this person that you are there together with them and you can try to go through this together with them, right? Step number 3 is to evaluate some options. So for instance, if let's say a person is really stressed out with child taking, what are some of the options that this person can take? If a person is really stressed out when it comes to work, what are some of the options that the person can consider? Right? Step number 4. Once you have listed out with this particular individual on the options available, then the person can have a clearer picture. Oh, actually, I don't really have to panic or I don't have any options, right? Because in the spur of the moment when we're panicked, a lot of us really couldn't think what could be the alternative or what could be the options. So do this together with them, evaluate together with them, and the person can actually take some action. And once the person have taken an action, step number 5 is always to check in with this person and to see how they are doing. Now, I also understand that there are times where, when this person really can't take it and you really see that, he or she is very stressed out, can't sleep, can't really eat, and it's beyond your ability to help this particular individual. If your company has access to EAP, Employee Assistance Program, you can also remind them or encourage them to contact all these companies. But if not, then there are also other alternatives. For instance, some hotline like Talian Kasih, the Befrienders, Lifeline Malaysia, where they can actually call in and speak to all these para counselors.
Okay. Some companies may not have the resources to provide the necessary mental health support. So, Evelyn, can you please share some tips on how companies to help
Right.
employees to obtain reliable mental health advice online, either to be paid or free for employees to use?
Right. Right. So whenever we talk about mental health support, right, there are basically a couple of mental health professionals that a person can go to, right? So for today's discussion, I'll be highlighting on 4 different expertise or 4 different areas, right? So the first 3 would be a psychiatrist, clinical psychologist, and counselor. So a psychiatrist is actually a medical doctor, and then they specialize in psychiatry, in the field of psychiatry. So they are the person where they can prescribe medication. Okay, a psychiatrist can prescribe medication, and some of them actually do provide therapy as well. Yeah. For counselors, on the other hand, they are a group of individuals who give therapy, right? Psychotherapy, counseling, for instance, for individual or couple or family, things like that. So these are the group of individuals where you can check them out at Lembaga Counseling Malaysia. They have a list of counselors there as well. And for clinical psychologists like myself, see us as like in between the counselor and the psychiatrist. We're in the middle here, right? So we are a group of individuals, mental health professionals, where we do diagnose individuals. For instance, if let's say for children, right, whether they have any learning problems or autism, ADHD, for children, adult, whether they have depression. So these are things that we do. We do diagnose. We do provide therapy like the counselors, but then we do not prescribe medication. Okay, that's the psychiatrist and not us. So apart from these 3 professions, there are also para-counselors out there. So for psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, and counselor, all of us do have at least a degree or postgrad degree in order to practice, right? For para-counselors, a lot of them, they are trained to do basic counseling skills, right? But they may not necessarily be mental health professionals per se, right? So I understand that, for instance, like Befrienders, they do train their volunteers there. Same goes for Lifeline Malaysia. They will listen to you through phone. It's free of charge if you call them, right? Talian Kasih as well and Mercy Malaysia, they do provide all these kind of services. So how do we know whether all these services or not? Where can the people go to? For psychiatrists, you can actually visit the Malaysian Psychiatric Association. They have a list and where are these doctors practicing. For clinical psychologists, you guys can actually visit the Malaysian Society of Clinical Psychology. We have a list of practicing and registered clinical psychologists with us in MSCP in Malaysia. Counselors as well, you can again check out Lembaga Counseling Malaysia. And para-counselors, as I mentioned earlier, you guys can check out Befrienders, Lifeline, Talian Kasih, and also Mercy Malaysia. So I see a question here, Jeff. One of
yes.
our audience would ask
Sylvia?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question from Sylvia. Okay, we're asking employees to put an office where during a video call, is it helpful to create a normal work environment?
That's a very good question. I think actually I would recommend to put that on. Why? Because as we mentioned earlier, right, we need to create some sort of routine. The routine, going to work, right, we will dress out, we would dress and we will wear our maybe formal wear or smart casual to go to work. This is a symbol of how we could also psychologically also make us feel more motivated and get into that serious mode, right? But most importantly, after work hours, after you change back to your home clothing, is where you're more chill and more relaxed, right? So apart from going back to, the normal work routine, as you have pointed out, it also helps to prepare us and helps us to wind down from work after working hours as well. So I think that is very important to maintain that routine.
Okay, Evelyn.
Yes.
Okay, the next one is I'd like to ask you, how could we extend what you have shared as also a way for individuals, especially those who live alone, to reframe the thinking of I'm stuck inside, instead of turning it into I can finally focus of my work on myself.
Right. So I know some of you guys here, maybe you're staying out of state, away from your family. Do let us know what worked for you, especially when you're on lockdown and you're alone working from home. Do feel free to share as well. Okay. Now, to answer your question, Jeff, it is very normal, very human for us to actually want to reach out for help and support during this period of time. So being stuck alone can be a very daunting experience, especially those staying away from family. So some tips about what you can do during this time. Now, tip number 1 is focus on what you can control. Now, in your room, maybe you're stuck and you'll be thinking, I don't know what to do. Going out grocery shopping, I don't know how's the situation out there, and I don't know who has infected or not. So, what are the things that you can control during this period of time? Stay safe, hand hygiene, make sure you maintain some social distance. Focus on the things that you can control. That's very important. And if you are feeling anxious during this time, acknowledge your feelings, right? Acknowledge that you are anxious. And tip number 3 is try to observe how your body is feeling. Now, some people, whenever they are anxious, they may feel, their back here is sore, their hands are trembling, they're feeling very anxious. So during this period of time, perhaps you can engage in doing something that, takes your attention away for a while. I see some people here saying that Athira says, read book, blogging. Yeah, these could be very helpful strategies to at least to, in a way, distract or to cope during times like this. Engage with the activities. Try to identify resources around you. So if, let's say, you have friends that you can call and speak to, but if you prefer to speak to someone else, you can call some hotlines that recommended earlier. This is what we can do individually as a person. But if, let's say, you know of a friend or a colleague who is staying alone, right? Nothing beats checking in with them, right? You can just give them a call and say, how are you doing? Do you need anything? How can I support you during this time? So again, it's all about connection, right? Even though we are physically apart, but do remember that we are all connected with the heart. Some people, because they have been working hard for many, many years and very long time, and now that they have some slight break, maybe they find it a bit lost and they don't know what to do as well, right? So you can always Google up, right? I've tried this. Try to Google up, like 50 ways to relax or things to do during lockdown. There are actually a lot of recommendations on what you can do. Some places, some courses, they offer it for free right now that you can join. Do something that you've always wanted to do that you don't have time, you've been procrastinating. Spring cleaning could also be one. So be creative on what you can do during this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, as we can see, there's a lot of people here
Yes.
basically sharing what we should do during the lockdown period. Yeah, there's a lot of very creative idea. Okay, so we goes to another questions from myself. Okay, although work from home is now an option, it may be for some due to the nature of the job.
Yeah.
How can employers as well as co-workers support employees who need to work on site?
Right. So remember we talked about physical, social, and mental, emotional earlier, right? So some people, I understand that they are also working on site during this period of time. So as employer, as co-worker, basic things, for instance, keeping physical space safe, disinfect, deep cleaning, to remind or to communicate this across the board is very important. How to make a person feel safe while going at work as well. So perhaps in the past, this person may take public transport. I know some companies, they allow certain flexibility during this time for this person perhaps to take the Grab and they can claim some of this flexibility, or providing lunch to employees. Again, care packs, sanitizers to make them available. Measuring of temperature is also another important thing, right? To make them feel safe and secure going to work. Social and emotional or mental, again, continue connecting with these individuals and do not stop checking in with them. Remember the ABC model that we mentioned earlier about the affect, behavior, and cognition. So you can always check in with them and to see how they are doing. Acknowledge that they could be going through some tough times and to see how to support them. And also do not forget that continue to have team lunch, even those going in the office in work, right? Yeah. So those would be some of the recommendations. There are some questions here that I see.
Here. Okay. Also
Yeah.
from Sylvia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What would be resources that could be considered reliable? Should we look for resources from a well-known individual or better from a public or government organization?
Right. So thanks for your question, Sylvia. So to answer your question, now when you talk about resources that are reliable, are you talking about mental health resources? So I'll be focusing on mental health, right? How do you know whether it's reliable? So for psychiatric services, as I mentioned earlier, you can check on the Malaysian Psychiatric Association. And also, if for clinical psychologists, you can check the Malaysian Society of Clinical Psychology. For counselors, you can check Lembaga Counseling Malaysia. So there, if let's say you have further questions to clarify or ask, you can always clarify or ask them. I believe you can ask them through Facebook as well, or send them an email if there are things that you are uncertain of. Right? If, let's say, for organizations, we know there are befrienders out there, Lifeline Malaysia. So all these are reliable resources, but never be afraid to ask and clarify.
Okay. I have another question from myself also.
Okay.
Should we have video calls or just conference calls sufficient to maintain work environment?
Video calls or conference call, right? I would think that having video call, there's always some form of engagement right now, right? So imagine if, let's say, we're doing this Facebook Live without seeing a person in front right now. The level of engagement is different. You can't see how the person behave. You can't see all this non-verbal. So it's a bit difficult to gauge how that person is doing or how that person is feeling. So if at any possibility, as best as you can, I would think doing video conferencing would be an option to go as opposed to just voice call. Yeah.
Okay, there's another new question from Alicia Chua.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Miss Evelyn, how to find a way to maintain sanity with facing four walls despite doing all the things we have tried, exercise, play games, watch movie, so on and so on. I understand it's more about the mindset. How's your opinion?
That's a very good question. So maintaining sanity during this time and extended another 2 weeks, right? That can be excruciating. But what are some of the things that you have tried, right? Here I see exercise, playing games, watch movie. Now, one thing that is interesting is, when I ask people, what are the things that you normally do at home? Or how do you relax yourself? A lot of us would share things like this, like exercise, play games, watch movie, or some cooking. So when I probe further, okay, what are other things that you have tried? Then they would say, actually, I can't think of any anymore, right? So how do we try something new in a safe environment, of course, during this period of time? Again, maybe some of the things that there are a lot of things that we have not tried as well. We can always Google that up. Some, they would some of my friends even, try doing some baking, things that they would never do before in the past, or even certain activities that, they can engage. Let's say if they exercise, right now they try to do like HIIT exercises, something new, something fresh, right? So during this period of time, try to find something creative ways. You can always Google these activities up.
Okay, one more question from Amira Razali.
Mm.
Okay, how to respond when your friends is panic? Either pause and take a breath.
How to respond when friend is panic?
Yes.
Okay, so how do we respond? Normally, if a person is panic, as we shared earlier, right, that person can be basically out of the place, right? They can't really structure their thoughts. So the first thing is pause this person, okay, acknowledge their feelings and say that, okay, so I understand that you are experiencing a lot of stress right now. Okay, let's take a deep breath. Okay, we figure this out and see how we can go about it. Take a deep breath. Okay, now try to structure, try to rephrase or paraphrase what the person is saying. So I hear that you are experiencing this, this, and this, right? So what are the things that you have tried doing? How do you feel doing all these things? Try to acknowledge their feelings and also try to see what are the other options available. Can try to figure this together with your peer as well. So most importantly, listen to them, acknowledge their feelings, and also go through what are some of the challenges that they have been through, evaluate certain options that perhaps they can take.
Okay, there is another question from Daichani Kurupia.
Yeah.
Okay. Mentally, it's actually beneficial to share COVID-related issue and update continuously. Does this impact mental health? Sharing is important, but will this make people more anxious? What's your take, and what's the right balance?
Right. Okay, so thank you for the question. Now we have a lot of news right now, right, that is not verified and maybe it's hoax, and it is actually causing a lot more distress, right? So I know some individuals, especially some of my clients, right, they do struggle with anxiety, and with this COVID, this MCO, it makes them feel even more anxious to cope, right? So one of the things that most of us would even discuss with them is to perhaps, if you really want to know the most updated news, right, you can listen it through the normal TV news channel. But if let's say there are a lot of people sending in, videos or some WhatsApp messages that would actually trigger or make the person feel more anxious, because that will actually happen, right? That would actually impact mental health. So try to avoid all these resources, especially right now. There are again a lot of unverified resources that is coming in as well. So try to pick and choose on what to hear. But if let's say your intention is to really see how is it happening, what's happening out there, what's the progress, listen to the news, perhaps that is sufficient. Or if you want to know more, learn it from reliable resources. But if let's say all these things, it's affecting your mental health, for instance, you find yourself panicking, or you find yourself feeling anxious, you find yourself having difficulty sleeping at night, right? These are some of the things that perhaps you could take note of. And if you find you want to speak to someone, to call out and reach out. Yeah.
Okay, another question from Steven. Hi, can you recommend a philosophy book to read while working from home to keep life-work balance?
Wow. Philosophy book to read. There's a lot. Let me see. So this is my personal take, right? It may not be applicable to many people. So this book that I'm reading, not sure if you would consider that as philosophy book, but I am reading a book by Irving Yalom. It's about in becoming a therapist. So the book actually writes and describes what the therapist may feel whenever they see a client in front of them, and some of the cases that Irving has gone through or experienced himself as a therapist, how that person may be feeling, and the whole dynamic during the session. I find that pretty eye-opening as a therapist myself, because there are times that we may be guessing, how is this client actually feeling, or what can we do to make this client feel better, or how can we improve on the things that we say, but also understanding from perhaps the client perspective as well. I find that really helpful. Yeah.
There's a good suggestion from Sabrina here, saying that do things you have always wanted to do but never had the time to.
Yeah. Do you have that, Jeff? Like there's things that you've always wanted to do but no time to do?
Yeah, yes, there's a lot. Spending time at home, doing some housekeeping. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
time to call back your hometown and your parents to have an engagement with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think that's very important, especially, like what we mentioned earlier, Jeff, that right now, maybe a lot of us, we can't go back hometown to visit our parents, right? So to call back, maybe video call, that's what me and my sister and my nieces are doing right now, right? To call back, video call, staying in touch on a daily basis, try to see, what's for dinner tonight, create at least some connection over there. Okay. Yeah.
okay, there's another good suggestion also from Atira, seeing that find new hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a time for us to find a new hobby to develop it during the time of lockdown.
Yeah. So finding something new to do and something interesting to do. So what are the things that, you guys have been doing here right now during this lockdown period?
For
Anyone?
myself, I'm actually doing planting at
Ah,
my condo. Yeah, so I hope. I'm not sure whether the plant. I mean, is going to be a success or not. But yeah, I'm in the way of developing this cultivation.
is it something that you have always wanted to do?
Yes, but
Yeah.
I want to do quite some long time. But due to some time commitment, then I actually stop it for all the way. So right now is a time to actually to develop this hobby.
Right, right. And I see like what you mentioned earlier as well, like Athira here say maybe can start doing all the things that we have been procrastinating on. That's very true, especially if, let's say, if it's work, right? Since we're talking about work from home, maybe there are
Yeah.
some backlogs that you have always wanted to do, but it's very time consuming and you need the space, non-distraction to have all these tasks completed. Maybe this is the time to clear all these backlogs. If it's home, spring cleaning is something that I dread doing and always wanted to do. Something in my checklist as well.
Okay, there is another new comment from Lily Xiao. Okay, I'm 68 years old, have been alone most of my life. So this period is okay with me, still living down. I can just come to an understanding it we are accountable to our life. Happy or not happy, we must work and fight the situations in our abilities. I have no support. My siblings have turned self-care. Well, I thank God every day for the food on my table and shelter my roof. Hobby is very important, at least one. Reading, cooking, growing plants. I'm a Christian, so my worship song in my spirit and already I enjoy it.
Right. Thank you for sharing, Lily Xiao. So I hear that, doing things that, all this while you have been enjoying, and also being at present, right? do what you can do at this period of time. Like I mentioned earlier, during this time, a lot of us can be very panicky and also afraid, right? Because there are a lot of uncertainties. But do things that you can control, because there are a lot of things that we can do now. It is still within our control. So like what one of our audience here shared, that, hobby is doing her hobbies as well, reading, cooking, growing plants, worshipping, keeping her spirits up. Yes. So I do agree that we shouldn't let this period of lockdown there would be changes. There definitely will be changes, but also creating or adapting new opportunities for us to learn during this period of time as well. Because there are also a lot of things that, sometimes we don't know that we can actually do it. But when we are put in a situation where we have no options, then we found that, actually all these abilities, it's always within yourself. Yeah. So during this lockdown, you can also create more opportunities for yourself.
Okay, there's one question from Rebecca Robert. What can we do to help our kids cope better in our current situation, especially as kids have short attention span and we are unable to take them out?
Right. So the first question is, I would say, how old is your kid, right? And how much do they understand about the situation out there? So there are two things basically that I think I would cover here. The first one is educating them. So a lot of kids, maybe because they don't understand the situation about COVID, they don't know the seriousness or the impact that it will cause when it comes to a person's health. So if it's a young kid, right, you can actually recommend this thing called the social stories. There are a lot of social stories that are available online. It's like comic strips, right? So they will list down, okay, this COVID, what is it? They will introduce like a character and slowly building up to that. The first thing first is, I say, would educate them on what is actually happening out there. This is also a way to keep them connected, right? At least they know, okay, why is all the adults so serious or so fearful about, right? Secondly, if let's say you want to do some activities with them, again, depending on the age of the kid, if let's say for younger children, painting, drawing, or some activities that all this while you guys do not have time to do together, like baking, all these things will need time. And perhaps this is something, time is not a luxury before this. If let's say we are working full-time, traveling most of the time, so would it be possible to take this opportunity to do all this with them? Plan the days together with them on what they would want to do. Engage in some family activities as well. And I know that some children, perhaps they are also, stuck with phone, and parents also don't know what to do, right? So try to look up. There are actually plenty of activities out there. Try to plan the day together with your children, your kid, your spouse as well, to make at least, to form that kind of support and that connection.
Okay. Another question from Josephine Siu.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Evelyn. Great session. What will you recommend for adolescents age 17 and above to do? Majority of the time is they are on the mobile phone and mobile games.
Good question. I get that a lot from parents. So what can we do for 17-year-old adolescents, right? Now, first thing is they are constantly on their mobile phone. Mobile phone playing games is also a form of connection, right? It's a form of connection with their friends. So what kind of connection that at this age that they are looking at with their peers? Is it that person with the same interests? Is it that someone who plays or speak their language? So what can we do with, let's say, as a parent with our kid, and to build that kind of connection? Now, again, there are a lot of resources out there, but I would say that spending time together and talking to your son and say, or your child, to say that, hey, let's do something together. What would you like to do? Planning the days together with them. I think a lot of us, especially with parents with children, a lot of parents perhaps having that kind of connection, having that kind of conversation may not necessarily happen very frequently, especially for working moms or parents, right? So try to have that connection or that conversation to roll on. Now, all these things wouldn't happen overnight, right? It would take time to build. So take these 2 weeks or 3 weeks as an opportunity to build this relationship with your child. Then perhaps slowly they will be more open and engage in certain activities that you want to do together with them.
Okay. Next question from Stephen Liao. Okay. If really this MCO to be extend another longer period, what's the mindset we shall have to be ready facing the challenge crisis to work from home perhaps maybe 2 to 3 months?
Right. So if let's say MCO is to be extended for another 2 to 3 months, right? I would say that right now it's also a time to create some routine for yourself working from home, right? As we mentioned earlier, dressing up for work while you do video calls and conference call, I think that's important to maintain that routine. We, in a way, because again there is a lot of things that is unpredictable for this point of time, so try to also take time to create a routine and get adjusted to this routine even after MCO. If let's say it's being lifted, right, let's say 3 months later or 2 months later, things will eventually change, right? Because the way we interact with people can also change after post MCO. So at this period of time, 2 to 3 months, if let's say the MCO will be extended, try to, number one, create a routine, and number two, slowly get yourself adjusted to these new routines, right? As we mentioned earlier, changes can be difficult, but it will also create a lot more new opportunities for us in work or to learn about ourselves. So I would say take your time and get adjusted to this routine.
Okay, that is all we have time for today. Miss Evelyn will be answering your questions offline. To stay
Sure.
tuned for the answer. Before we end of the session, any final words, Evelyn?
Right. I think I've said this a couple of times today, but I think that is really, really important is that even though, right, we are all physically apart right now, we are doing this Facebook Live, but we are all still connected at the heart. Okay. So during times like this, will be a lot of adjustment. There are a lot of challenges, perhaps changes, but change do create new opportunities. So it's not all bleak, right? So meanwhile, remember to wash those hands, maintain social distancing, and please be safe.
Yeah. Okay, remember, personal hygiene is the key.
Yes.
That's all from us today. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you, Evelyn, for sharing tips on supporting employee mental health for better work from home outcomes. Do
Yeah.
like and share this video so we could all stay safe and healthy together. Goodbye.
Bye.